Hello, I'm Al Gravelle. This is number 0847, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0847. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, you'll meet Zay Harding, who is the host of the hit CBS environmental show called The Visioneers with Zay Harding. He travels the world sharing environmental stories. Who is the best at protecting the planet?
Up north in Europe is definitely leading the way. Copenhagen in itself, I mean, everybody's riding the bike. There's more bikes than cars, and they're getting free energy. All the artwork you see around the city has to do with recycling and motivating people. They've got an initiative within their government that it's an incentive so that if you turn in certain recyclables, you get rewarded with discounts at certain places. And there's even an electric boat that you can ride. And while you're doing it, they give you a little pincher claw that you can pick up any bottles you see floating in the water. You turn those in, you get more points.
Best-selling author Michael Perry has a new book out called Improbable Mentors and Happy Tangents. The idea of this book came about when a friend took him ocean fishing.
He said, I'll take you fishing. I'd never caught a fish in the ocean. So we went 12 miles out in this big boat. I caught my very first fish in the ocean. And as I was reeling it in, the engines quit. And so we spent the next 4 hours with the captain of the ship idling us back to shore. And this friend of mine, Andy, we just talked about where he too ended up somewhere he never expected. And we were just talking about all the people we'd met along the way who helped shape us, inform us, and prepare us for what we wound up doing. At the end of our little boat ride, Andy said, you ought to write a book about this.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, is back with the weird story for the month of November. This one deals with a goat who could have been a blast.
Imagine a goat that ate 2 sticks of dynamite and then wandered around the field, and people didn't know what was going to happen to this thing. This goat ate half a pound of nitroglycerin. This was in Aurora, Illinois, like I said, 1923, and people did not know what to do. This was basically looked like a walking bomb. Completely loaded animal. People were afraid he was just going to blow up at any second.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, morning shower thoughts, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest slater, the person who told you this was show number 0847, was Al Gravelle, a broadcaster, voice specialist, and a former radio colleague. Thank you very much, Al, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. 66-year-old Paul Severson, a Lake Crystal, Minnesota resident, faces disorderly conduct charges after multiple reports of public nudity outside his home. Police filed a November 4th misdemeanor complaint following witness accounts of Severson performing yard work without clothing. One witness told authorities Severson was chainsawing while butt-ass naked. A sheriff's deputy observed the nude suspect appear from beside a shed and informed him he could not be naked outside with children around and people driving by. The charges stem from an October incident when a child riding the school bus saw Severson naked outside his residence. Neighbors reported this was not an isolated occurrence, with multiple witnesses describing Severson doing yard work while nude on various occasions around his property. I'm sure one of Severson's nicknames is simply Sever, especially if he's naked using a chainsaw.
Homelight for the pro and the man who wants to cut like one.
Spanish authorities arrested 7 suspects accused of stealing over 1,100 restaurant chairs across Madrid and nearby areas. Spain's national police said the criminal group targeted outdoor seating at 18 establishments in Madrid and Talavera de la Reina during August and September. The theft ring included 6 men and 1 woman who operated at night taking chairs from restaurant patios. Police estimate the stolen property's value at around $69,000. The suspects face charges including theft and belonging to a criminal organization. Authorities say the group resold the stolen chairs in Spain, Morocco, and Romania. Spanish restaurants and bars commonly leave metal and plastic outdoor furniture on patios overnight, typically stacking chairs and securing them with chains. Gee, I hope they all had to stand for their arraignment. And when they go to prison, they all have to constantly play musical chairs. Yeah. Firefighters rushed to an AHN hospital in Brentwood, Pennsylvania for a fire around a patient's head. Hospital security put the fire out before firefighters arrived, so their job was to investigate. The conclusion, the fire erupted when 55-year-old Monique Henriksen, who was on oxygen, lit a crack pipe and her hair burst into flames. She has been moved to a burn unit with severe injuries. Assuming she survives, Henriksen will have to answer to a felony charge of risking a catastrophe. You know, a high school science class should have stopped her hair from going up in flames. Well, hair today, gone tomorrow. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, a Kentucky woman received human arms and fingers in the mail last week when she expected medicine she had ordered online. Christian County Coroner Scott Daniel reported the woman discovered the body parts after opening her delivery in Hopkinsville. Daniel said the mix-up involved an airline company, freight company, and courier service. The coroner responded to the woman's residence and transported the body parts to the morgue. The remains will be returned to the courier for proper delivery to their intended destination. According to Daniel, body parts are commonly shipped for transplant procedures or research purposes, though the specific use for these particular parts remains unknown. Well, that's creepy. Mind you, not as creepy as a cannibal ordering from DoorDash or Skip the Dishes. So delicious, fresh from Skip the Dishes. Anyway, let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff All program, shall we? Zay Harding is the host of The Visioneers with Zay Harding, the hit CBS Saturday morning eco-adventure series that takes viewers around the world as it showcases scientists, engineers, and everyday people who are creating environmental solutions. In fact, Jay is currently in another part of the world. He joins us now from Lisbon via riverside.com. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. Now, this, if I'm not mistaken, is in the second season, correct?
Yeah, we're in full stride right now. We had an amazing first season and great reception. It's really I was blown away. We even won an award, and so now we're about 2/3 done with the second season, and we're hitting Europe right now. We just landed in Portugal today, and ready to take on a bunch of amazing initiatives out here.
How many episodes do you have per season?
So the first season was technically a half season. There were 13 episodes, and then this one is double that. So this is the full season of 26 episodes.
How did the show come together in the first place, and what was your involvement in the creation of that show?
Well, I'm happy to say that I've been incredibly involved. It's hard to say when it really began because this has been kind of brewing for a while. I used to host a travel show on PBS that took me around the world a few times. That was mainly to introduce cultures and expose each other around the world to everything else that's out there. I ended up noticing that there's a lot of climate care that needs to be going on that everybody's experiencing. So I thought, one of my brother's best friend, he has an organization where he's been trying to raise awareness for about a decade now called Volo Foundation. And so, we're both from Hawaii. And so while we were out surfing one day, I pitched him the idea. I said, what if we made a professional show about finding solutions to climate issues? And he loved it. He thought, wow, that would be so fantastic. So, and he really liked Globe Trekker too. So he said, if you can make a similar type program, but change the focus from the travel, let it still involve travel, but focus on what people are doing to actually make changes in a positive way. And so his organization funded the pilot, and I got together with the same team that shot Globe Trekker out in England. And we filmed a 2-hour pilot, 10 different stories that we felt demonstrated where this series could go. And Hearst Media Production Company saw that and they loved it. And they said, look, we have space on CBS Saturday mornings. Would you be interested in doing this there? And so I was absolutely thrilled. We changed the name to Visioneers, focused more on people, lightened the tone a lot, because on Saturday mornings, you're gearing it towards kids, which is perfect because kids are the future. And ironically, they're doing the most, the biggest initiatives are coming from kids, which is super exciting and fantastic. So that's kind of how it all came to be in a nutshell. And CBS has just been really receptive and loving it as well. So it's a great platform. It's an incredible opportunity to let people see positive things going on in the world rather than just the doom and gloom, because there's so many amazing initiatives that are going on. So the show is focusing on the people behind these initiatives. Some of them are scientists, some are kids, some are everyday people, and all of them are committed to trying to make this world a better place for each other.
Have you always been an environmentalist? And also, if that is the case, does that stem from your background from Hawaii?
100% yes, it stems from my background. Was I always an environmentalist? Perhaps, but not knowing it. I knew I was an environment appreciator, and I still am. And that's kind of when this all decided to happen, was when I started noticing changes that were concerning everybody. It wasn't just one area, it was around the globe. They were all talking about it. And my ears kind of perked up and said, oh, well, this is a bigger issue than I thought. And if we are going to protect it anywhere, it has to be protected everywhere. So I decided to make this the focus, and it's really, really rewarding. And so, yes, at this point, I am absolutely an environmentalist. Was I always? I think I was without knowing it.
I've seen the show, and one of the things that I enjoy about it is your enthusiasm. And I'm just curious to know if, even though you are an environmentalist, was there anything in the show in the first season, or now season and a half, that was an eye opener for you?
Yes, the involvement of kids was truly a big time eye opener for me. I didn't expect it, and when they go back and they're telling their story about when they created it, I mean, I had a 12-year-old talking about when he was 5, his friend's house got blown away in a tornado, and he decided to make it his goal, his mission, to figure out how they could predict tornadoes earlier. Now, the Doppler can figure it out 13 minutes before. This guy tuned into ultrasonic sounds, which is a frequency that only tornadoes have. And he created a sensor and then 3D printed a box around it so that it could sit on a drone. And he sends these drones into these areas where they're not in the storm, but they're close enough to catch that vibration. And he can predict when a tornado is coming 43 minutes before. So this is substantially faster, at least half an hour before the Doppler can. And so now he's working at 12 years old. His dad helped him create this app that is now they're putting into practice along Tornado Lane. I mean, you just think this was at 5 years old, he was already thinking about how he could better the planet. So that was one, but continuously the creativity of people, like in Copenhagen, there's a thing called Copenhill where straight out of Star Wars. You remember that compressor that you get stuck in the trash, Han Solo and Princess Leia? I mean, this is like one of those, but times 100. It's just a giant. They have hundreds of trucks every single day that bring in trash from around not just Denmark, everywhere in Europe for hundreds of miles. They bring it in because they're burning all that trash. They throw it into a giant incinerator, and that's turning into electricity for the city. It's solving two problems because it's giving them clean energy, and it's also clearing the landfills all the way even to London. They're getting their trash from there as well. And on top of that, because they didn't want it to be an eyesore, they hired a contest to create a structure that housed this waste to energy plant. They turned it into a ski hill and they call it Copenhagen. And they're able to carbon capture everything that comes out, and they also all the only runoff is just some steam, which is incredible.
In traveling the world, you get to see who or what country is environmentally friendly and what country has some ways to go. Who do you think tops the list and who do you think falls short?
Yeah, it's hard to deny that the up north in Europe is definitely leading the way. I mean, Copenhagen in itself. I mean, everybody's riding the bikes. There's more bikes than cars over there, and they're getting free energy. All the artwork you see around has to do with recycling and motivating people. They've got an initiative within their government. It's an incentive so that if you turn in certain recyclables, you get rewarded with discounts at certain places. And there's even an electric boat that you can ride. And while you're doing it, they give you a little pincher claw that you can pick up any bottles you see floating in the water. You turn those in, you get more points. I mean, it's really supported. So you've got in Norway you've got hybrid cruise ships. Like they're really thinking about the impact that they're making and trying to, and actually in a few years they've got the model already built for the fully electric cruise ship, and it plugs in just like an electric car but in a giant version of it. But those guys even take all their food. You think of all the food that comes off of a cruise ship, all that waste, the compost they're giving to, they make a stop at a farmer, a local farmer, who takes that compost and grows the very food that he's giving back to the selling back to the ship. So it's a full cycle that they're really thinking about it, and they're all working together. And so as far as who's falling short, it's going to be anybody that doesn't believe that we need to make a difference. And that's apparent in a lot of different places. And so one of my goals is to just not be political about it, but just let people see that we do need climate care, and what we are doing here is affecting people elsewhere. One of my travels, I remember being in China, and there was a lot of people just burning their garden, all the dead leaves and stuff, and their trash. And I thought it was just smoggy because of that, but then when I wasn't seeing that, it was still smoggy. And I was there for weeks, and it was not a single day where I couldn't look up at the sun through all the smog. And I thought, my gosh, this is actually not smoke. This is pollution, and this is the same air that we breathe around the other side of the world. So we all need to think about that we can be selfish and deny that anything's going on, but it's still going to affect others. So it's better if we can do our part to just kind of be aware that this is a world that we all live in.
What was your goal when the show first went on the air, and have you succeeded that?
Yes, my goal was to make it fun. I find the best way to learn is to have fun. And I've got a daughter who's just turned 9. I notice it with her. If it's not fun, she tunes out. And so my goal was to make her want to watch all these episodes, and that's worked. She loves it. She always asks for more when we're done. She loves talking about it afterward. That was also part of the goal, is just to create a discussion within the family homes. And the fact that we're on CBS is so amazing, and it's such an opportunity to get into. It's a household name now, so as long as people are talking about it, I'm happy, and they are. We're all guilty of it, and myself included, and a lot of it because of the system, a lot of it because we didn't know better. So now that we know better, now we're kind of re-looking at our system and seeing, is this the best way? And I'm just blown away because it does feel like there's a shift in the last couple of years where people are wanting to make a difference, and the whole cancel culture, like, it's great. It's basically, it's people bullying people who are hurting the world right now. So they'll gang up and say, you know what, you got to think of everybody, not just yourself. So it's great what's happening.
In the summers when your daughter is out of school, do you get the chance to take her with you?
Yeah, so she's stopped off at a couple different places, but yeah, it does come down to her school schedule. So we actually had a break where she came out and joined me on set. We happened to be in California at that time, so that was fun. She just loves that I'm online. Like that's the way kids are these days, right? Because there's TV, which I get excited about because that was the main thing to get on when I was growing up. But her whole thing is just like streaming. So it's great that this is also streaming on demand as well.
And do you get some of these story ideas by, looking at it through the lens of a child's eye, like your daughter?
Yes, not initially, but ultimately that is the goal. We're well aware now that a huge part of our audience is Saturday morning kids and their parents. And so as I'm listening to scientists, if I find something a little bit over my head, I'll make sure I stop and break it down. And I don't mind seeming vulnerable or not smart, because at the end of the day, if I don't make it clear, I'm going to lose my audience. And so I'd rather be over thorough. But we also have an amazing editing team that they're not on set with us. They get the pitches, so they know basically what it's about, and we send them the dailies of everything we shot and with field notes to tell them what we think will make sense. But they really do make sense of it, and they add in graphics, and then by the time I'm doing the voiceovers, I'm just blown away that like their understanding of the subject is just so thorough. And they say that if you really want to learn something, try to teach it. And so this is basically what we're having to do, is to teach what we're learning. And so we really do get a thorough understanding of it before we put it out there.
Well, congratulations on the show. It's called The Visioneers with Zay Harding. And Zay, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. This has been great. Appreciate your support too.
Jay Harding, the host of The Visioneers with Jay Harding. It airs on CBS Saturday mornings. Check your local listings. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
Where do pirates get their hooks? Second-hand stores.
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like. But the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
I'm standing and singing my heart out for Canada. Hi, this is Sarah McLachlan. I'm often asked what song gets the biggest audience reaction when I sing it. Well, that's easy. It's one we all know. It gets everyone on their feet and fills us with pride. It's our national anthem. Buy Canadian. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada for Canada.
You're listening to the Stuff File program. It's a different kind of show. It's like a brown pair of shoes in a world of tuxedos. Here's Peter Anthony Holder.
And still to come in the program, we'll talk to the author of Improbable Mentors and Happy Tangents. Plus, Marc Hartzman from WeirdHistorian.com talks about an explosive goat. We also have a morning shower thought and, of course, an idiot of the day and much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. A New Jersey woman has pleaded guilty to a 4 a.m. torching of a man's home after he fell asleep inside and stood her up on a booty call. 35-year-old Taya Russell copped to aggravated arson, a second-degree felony. In a plea deal, prosecutors have agreed to recommend an 8-year prison term, of which Russell will be statutorily required to serve 85%, or more than 6.5 years. Russell was indicted on 5 other charges, including attempted murder and aggravated assault. As part of the deal, prosecutors will move to dismiss those counts when she is sentenced on January the 9th. Russell had traveled to the Woodbury home of the victim, Curtis Stokes, who told cops he invited the defendant to his residence to have sex. Stokes added that Russell was his side chick with whom he had been having sex. The pair's pre-dawn communication had consisted of Russell texting Stokes hello, to which he romantically responded, "Bring your ass." Wow, that's chivalry. But by the time Russell arrived, Stokes had fallen asleep and did not respond to her at the door. Incensed, Russell sent a text complaining that, "You wasted my money to come out here." Receiving no reply, Russell then texted a series of threats. "You smoked? I see you want to die. And I swear to God, I hope you die." Russell then went to a Conoco gas station and purchased lighter fluid, matches, and a cigarette lighter. She returned to Stokes' home and set a fire outside the rear apartment's sole entrance and exit. Stokes told police he awoke to a smell of smoke and was unable to leave via the door as the fire was too intense. Stokes, who suffered first and second-degree burns, forcefully removed an entire window frame to escape. Wearing only a T-shirt and covered head to toe in soot and ash, he ran to the nearby police headquarters to report the blaze. Again, wearing only a T-shirt. He was later treated at a local hospital for burns and smoke inhalation. The criminal case against Russell has, for unknown reasons, dragged on for more than 6 years. During that period of time, Russell gave birth to a child. Hopefully, the child's father didn't go up in flames. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. A Florida driver who was pulled over for going 107 miles per hour told police he was trying to make an appointment with his barber. Dash camera and body camera video of the traffic stop released by the Flagler County Sheriff's Office shows that driver 57-year-old Michael Stanek raced down the highway before being signaled to pull over by cops. After requesting that he exit the vehicle, the deputy is then heard asking Stanek why he was going so fast, to which he replies, "I have an appointment with my barber in New Smyrna." In Florida, motorists caught driving over the speed limit by 50 miles per hour or at speeds of 100 miles per hour or more are considered super speeders and can face jail time. Stanek was taken to the Sheriff Perry Hall inmate detention facility, where he was later released on a $150 bond. Well, depending on how much time he gets, he'll really need his barber when he gets out. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, and speaking with people who have traffic violations, a motorist in Fullerton, California attempted to use a Monopoly get-out-of-jail-free card when pulled over for a traffic violation. Police posted about the unusual encounter on social media after the driver handed the board game card to an officer. Police said the officer found humor in the creative approach, but explained that while originality was appreciated, the card had no legal value. The driver received an actual citation instead. Officers advised the motorist to keep the Monopoly card for a rainy day before letting him go. The police department shared the story as an example of the lighter moments officers sometimes experience during routine traffic stops in the California city. Oh, you just know that he has tried this before. There is no way that this is a one-off.
You're going directly to jail, fella. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200.
And let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff All program, shall we? Michael Perry is back on the show. We had him on the show back in 2017 when his book, The Jesus Cow, came out. Well, his latest book is called Improbable Mentors and Happy Tangents. Michael joins us from Wisconsin via Riverside.com. Hi, Michael.
Well, good to talk to you again. It's been a little while.
Nice to talk to you, too, as well. Now, I understand that the book, the title of the book, the subtitle of the book is a lot longer, and that is How Firefighters and Poets, Truckers and Nurses, Soldiers and Singers, and Other Improbable Individuals Can Show You the Way in Business and Creativity. And I just want to talk about how are those other people improbable individuals as far as you're concerned?
They're improbable because they, they operate in fields utterly unlike the field that I've made my living in for the last 30 years. And yet each one of them indelibly influenced me and helped me along this path long before I knew I was going to be on it. I've said in other interviews that they're the ones who show you the way before the way is clear. And so let's take just for a moment nurses. I have a nursing degree and wound up being a nurse for just a short time, enjoyed it, but started writing, got a few writing assignments, thought it would be kind of a hobby and I'd go right back to nursing. 30 years later, I've been writing for a living ever since. And in nursing school, I had some wonderful instructors who taught me how to sit down with an individual, perhaps assess their abdominal pain, but not get tunnel vision. Also get their vital signs, but also inquire as to their emotional health, as to their situation in life, family, how were their support systems. In other words, to do a holistic human assessment. And when I went on to become a writer, well, nursing is about human assessment. And what is writing but human assessment? And then also when I became a self-employed writer, I'm a volunteer firefighter, have been for years. And there are things like not going into a scene until you're sure it's safe. And I drew on the example of some of the unsafe situations I got into to realize that sometimes first mover status, as they call it, is a good idea. You want to be first to an idea. You want to act quickly. Other times, it's far more important for the survival of you and your career to hold back for a moment and observe and pay attention. So all of these things were training me to become a self-supporting writer over the years. But of course, at the time, I had no idea because it seemed utterly unrelated to what I didn't even know I was going to do.
You have been a best-selling author for quite some time. You have several books out. When did this idea of doing this particular book, Improbable Mentors and Happy Tangents, when did that come to light?
I was stranded on a boat in the middle of the ocean. Probably not the middle. I think we were only 12 miles out. So I'm a country boy from northern Wisconsin, but I had a friend in Alabama who I went down there to do some speaking engagements, and he said, "I'll take you fishing." I'd never caught a fish in the ocean. So we went 12 miles out in this big boat. I caught my very first fish in the ocean, and as I was reeling it in, the engines quit. And so we spent the next 4 hours with the captain of the ship idling us back to shore. It was dark by the time we got back. And this friend of mine, Andy, we just talked about where he too ended up somewhere he never expected. And we were just talking about all the people we'd met along the way who helped shape us, inform us, and prepare us for what we wound up doing. And again, he had started out as a comedian, and then he wound up hosting a country music show, and then eventually wound up being a million-selling author. And so at the end of our little boat ride, Andy said, "You ought to write a book about this." Or actually, he said, "You ought to put this together as a talk, as a speech, a keynote speech." And I didn't think much about it. And then on the flight home, I just thought, well, I might as well do that. And so I put together what I thought would be a little speech and then turned it into this little book.
When you give speeches, especially a speech like this, do you get feedback after the speech from people who may have attended it? And is that something that gives you an aha moment going forward?
Oh, yeah. I love connections and connections that aren't obvious. And for instance, I grew up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin. Now, if you could see my hands, you could tell I was raised by farmers and loggers. If you could see my hands, you would know that I haven't done a lot of logging or farming lately. But I speak to a lot of farm groups. And one of the things that I write about in this book is how when I speak to farmers, mostly I'm there to be a humorist. I do a lot of humor performances and I talk about funny things that happened on the farm. But I'm also a self-employed writer. Now, you wouldn't think I'd have a lot in common with farmers, but farmers are often self-employed. It's a singular endeavor. You have to work really hard to get ahead. There are fluctuations in the market you can't control, just like there are fluctuations in book sales I can't control. And so what gives me joy is if I, as a writer, can give a talk to a bunch of farmers and then afterwards have a farmer say, oh, yeah, I made that connection, or I understand that. So yes, I learn from every group. I do a lot of fire and EMS speaking as well, and firefighters and EMTs. And I was just on a fire scene yesterday morning as a volunteer. And there are always these commonalities that we can draw out from others' experiences and apply to our own. And that's what I tried to lay out in this little book.
You know, one of the things I'm getting from this particular book is the fact that people can change course along the way, and people can think other things other than what they initially wanted to do. Now, in my case, I'm a person who wanted to be a broadcaster since I was 7. So, and I had a one-track mind, even though there were many people, including my own family, who tried to derail me. So I guess I'm asking for this particular group of people like myself, is your book for somebody who has literally a one-track mind, career-wise and life-wise?
Yes, because in my case, even though I ping-ponged around for a while, in the introduction to the book, I just say I was that pragmatic person. I was very sensible. I got a good college degree. I was a good student. I was a decent person, I hope. And I was going to do all those very pragmatic things. And then all of a sudden I took off in this tangent, bounced around, and then found this thing I loved and got to do it for 30 years. And I think the commonality there is our doggedness, our belief in ourselves, even though in your case, you figured it out way earlier than I did. I was still digging in the dirt when you knew what you wanted to do. And but in both cases, there's that kind of what I refer to as a stubborn perseverance, where you just put your head down, you go, there's this voice in me telling me this is the right way to go. And so I think there is that commonality, and that a tangent, in my case, the tangents bounced all over the place. In your case, you saw the road right before you.
Outside of the stories that you've mentioned already, what were some of the people that surprised you when looking back at your life, that surprised you as being mentors, even though you might not have realized they were a mentor at that time?
Well, one that comes to mind immediately, and this is so basic, but I love to tell it. I was a good student in high school, but I went to a very tiny rural school. I had good grades, but frankly, I kind of got away with not studying, and I really didn't work that hard to get those good grades. And I was always looking for the easy way out. And when I was a senior in high school, I took a typing class, and I thought, well, this will be easy. I'll just fiddle around in typing class. I'll get an easy A and never mind. And yet, and the teacher that I had was very young and energetic, and I'm sure she got weary of me, but somehow she really did teach me how to type. And of course, it would be another 6 or 8 years before one day I looked up and realized that Miss Grant, who's in the book, taught me how to type. And every day I make a living and am fulfilled by the fact that I learned how to type.
Well, that's something that we do have in common. I took 2 years of typing in high school. And of course, as a broadcaster and as a former news anchor, I type a lot, right?
That's right.
All I do every day. But my reason was not for the easy A. I, A, wanted to type, and B, at the time when I was typing, the ratio of guys to girls in that class, it was off the charts.
Well, I can speak to that because I went to nursing school and I was in a class of 95 students with 2 other men, and they were both older married guys out of the military. So yes, it sounds like we've got some commonalities, and I think ultimately it's just that dedication to a goal. And you had that dedication to a goal from the age of 7. I had a dedication to a goal that was a lot more fuzzier, but it just had to do with finding what it was I really wanted. And that's where I would say that folks like you and I overlap, just that focus.
Well, we're all lucky that you found what you wanted to do because you have several books out, all bestsellers. The latest one is Improbable Mentors and Happy Tangents. Michael, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us once again.
It was great to talk to you again. Thank you for having me.
Michael Perry, author of Improbable Mentors and Happy Tangents. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0847, and you'll find the link to his site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
Taxes are just a yearly subscription to the country you live in. Childhood is the free trial.
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestuffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestuffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
Coming to you from the outskirts of sanity, this is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
And still to come in the program, we have our monthly visit from Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, with our weird story for the month of November. We also have an Idiot of the Day coming your way a little later on, but I've got a few more Stuff File news stories to get to right here, right now. 27-year-old Moesha Gardner thought she'd prank her husband by texting him a photo that she generated with AI to back up her claim that a man had forced his way into their North Bethesda, Maryland home. Her husband, who was at work at the time at 10:30 a.m., didn't laugh. He called 911 and 8 police cars were dispatched to the house. Officers didn't laugh either. Gardner was arrested, charged with falsely reporting a home invasion, and released on a $10,000 bond. Said Montgomery County Police, so-called swatting calls, false reports made to trigger a large police response, waste valuable emergency resources and can put lives at risk. These actions carry serious legal consequences. I've got a suggestion for a prompt that Gardner can type into ChatGPT the next time she uses it. Help me find a productive purpose in life before I get arrested again. And in our next story, it's also very similar to our last story. What started as a frightening 911 call turned out to be completely fake. St. Petersburg, Florida police say a woman who claimed a stranger broke into her apartment and attacked her made up the story and even created a fake suspect image using AI. Last month, officers responded to a reported break-in at the apartment of 32-year-old Brooke Chenault. Said a police spokesperson, the victim, now suspect, had shown proof of images of a person that she didn't know and had entered her home forcibly and possibly injured her getting inside of her house. Investigators say forensic teams and a canine unit searched the area but found no suspect. A few hours later, Chenault's boyfriend called police back, saying she hadn't told them everything. When officers returned, Chenault claimed that she had also been sexually assaulted. That's when a detective was called to the scene and immediately became suspicious of the photo Chenault provided. The detective immediately saw the proof or the evidence that she provided and immediately knew that it was part of a TikTok trend that police are seeing online. Investigators later found the AI-generated image saved in Chenault's deleted files, created days before she ever called 911. Chenault is now charged with 2 misdemeanors. You know, I could have easily made the last 2 stories the idiot of the day, but I didn't. That comes up later. But let's get to our last guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, is back with a story for the month of November. Marc joins us from New York via Riverside.com. And Marc, I hear that this month's story is potentially a blast, but enough with the humor because it's so bad.
Yep, that's right. This story is pretty explosive. So this took place November 1923, so 102 years ago this month. And as you've kind of already suggested, it has to do with a goat. And as we know, people generally know, goats will eat just about anything. Now people actually hire them to go eat their weeds. So goats are being put to use because they'll just put anything in their mouths and digest it. But imagine a goat that ate 2 sticks of dynamite and then wandered around the field, and people didn't know what was going to happen to this thing. So this goat ate half a pound of nitroglycerin. This was in Aurora, Illinois, like I said, 1923, and people did not know what to do. This was basically looked like a walking bomb, completely loaded animal. People were afraid he was just going to blow up at any second. And so this made front page headlines in many newspapers, all of them trying to, asking the same questions like, what do we do with this goat that ate the dynamite? So people, of course, had suggestions of maybe how they could handle this situation because, of course, it was unusual and seemed a little terrifying and potentially very destructive. So there was one suggestion where someone said, well, why don't we just get it into a corner and we'll use some some heads of cabbage to lure it over there, and then they would chloroform it, and then they would detonate the goat on a dump heap. Which, again, the whole thing sounds crazy. The only problem with this is that you would need someone to, some volunteer to go do this deed, right? Someone would have to go deal with this and drag the loaded, dynamite goat to this dump heap and detonate it. So that's not good. That would be a not so great volunteer. And its owner, a guy named Dick McMahon, he didn't want that anyway. He rejected the plan. He didn't want to kill the goat. He felt that this was going to be okay. He thought that the goat would digest the dynamite, as he said, quote, as completely as he had racing sulky tires and similar delicacies. So the goat had been eating other stuff. It was eating rubber tires and God knows what else. But I guess he figured the dynamite wouldn't be that big of a deal. Ultimately, it would just digest like anything else. And you might be wondering where it got the dynamite to begin with.
Well, actually, before that, I was curious to know if anybody saw the goat eat the dynamite, because it's one thing for dynamite to go missing. It's another thing to say, oh, it must have been the goat who ate it.
Well, it didn't specify if there were witnesses to it. I think they just discovered that the dynamite was missing. Although maybe they did catch from a distance before they could get to it to stop it or pull, somehow wrench it out of its mouth. But basically what had happened was there were workers who were digging a well, out in this farm area, and the dynamite, the explosives were stored by a shed, and the goat just got into it. So I guess they noticed that was missing, and this thing was walking around as the only, I guess, potential culprit to make that dynamite go missing. And this goat was kind of beloved on its farm. It was given to this guy McMahon by a millionaire printer in Chicago, a guy named Harry Reno, who was given the goat. He was given the goat by William Wrigley, the Chicago Cubs owner. So this goat came from some nice prestige, and the goat was really well liked by the racehorses that were sharing that pasture it was in. And so the other issue for McMahon was that taking the goat away would actually upset the horses a little bit. So he didn't want to detonate the goat, and he didn't want to upset the horses. So again, it just became this unusual situation of what to do. And like I said, the press was loving this whole thing. Again, made for great headlines and jokes. Of course, one of the jokes I thought was pretty good was the newspaper said a goat in Aurora, Illinois ate 2 sticks of dynamite and may become the Aurora Borealis soon. However, there were no follow-up reports of the goat actually exploding. So it seems that maybe McMahon was right and the goat did digest the dynamite. Nothing was actually ended up triggering this in any way within its digestive system, fortunately. So it seems that the goat was able to get through it okay. Hopefully it didn't need any more.
You said the goat was originally owned or beforehand was owned by William Wrigley?
Yeah.
Do you think he fed it chewing gum?
It seems like, that what harm could that possibly do?
Well, a lot less harm than dynamite.
Exactly, right. Like no big deal for the goat. It'll eat anything, clearly.
So this was such a big story in the news, a lot of the media. Why did the story kind of, for lack of a better term, fizzle out? Because I would assume that reporters, one way or the other, would find that the goat was either alive or had exploded. But the fact that we don't know anything about the goat, I find it kind of shocking.
Yeah, it feels like it was one of those sensational stories that everyone picked up on. And since there was no sensational ending, I guess it didn't get a second wave of press. I'm sure if it exploded, they would have had some, they would have enjoyed some more headlines at its expense. But I guess the fact it survived wasn't quite as interesting to them.
You couldn't have an exploding goat story today because if that story kind of fizzled out, you'd have people on social media going, okay, so what happened to the goat?
Exactly. Yeah, these were different times, 102 years ago. It was in the paper for a day and people moved on.
This was, you said, 1923, so it was between a war and between the crash.
Yes.
What other big news was around? Because, I kind of feel sorry for the goat. I want to be his press secretary.
Well, I'm glad that there were no extra stories about the goat. That this went okay for the goat. It got through it. So good for the goat. And it could have been a really gruesome ending for sure. And it's not just for the goat. I mean, who knows if something did happen in some way, if it did somehow get triggered from within. Not quite sure how exactly that would happen, but if it did, I mean, you can understand the concern because that could have been really catastrophic for anyone in its path.
Yeah, and for the goat, it's the worst case of heartburn.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Now you just said earlier that you didn't wish that the goat got more stories, and I'm thinking, is this a correct quote from the curator of WeirdHistorian.com?
Well, I always say that because I'm glad that the goat survived. That's all.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that there should have been a finality to the story, even if the goat it did survive, rather.
Well, that's true. It would have been nice to know that everyone could have been resting assured that no one was injured or harmed, and that all ended well with the goat, and it was able to go on and eat more tires or whatever else it was finding out there. Or maybe more gum.
Exactly. Is this story in any one of your books?
Not yet, but I actually, I'm planning to put it in something I've been working on for a while. So it may show up sometime soon.
Are there any stories that you absolutely will not print?
Well, yeah, I tend to stay away from anything that's overly disturbing in a violent way, that kind of stuff. I tend to prefer not to get into stuff that's overly disturbing.
So what you're saying then is if the goat had exploded, we wouldn't be talking about it.
Not it's more like more evil-minded stuff I would prefer to stay away from. Yeah, exactly. the true crime type stuff that gets a little, disturbing.
So, if Dick McMahon had fed the goat dynamite, then definitely it would not be a go.
That would have been really cruel. Yeah, but that didn't happen, fortunately. This was, a goat just being a goat.
And are we sure that the goat didn't eat it by virtue of Dick feeding it to him?
Well, there's certainly no indication that happened. And Dick was all for keeping the goat alive. He was in support of the goat, so I don't think he would have done anything like that. That seems out of character for Dick McMahon.
But suddenly he's getting a lot of press.
and I think that would have upset Harry Reno, the millionaire in Chicago, and William Wrigley, the Cubs owner. And you wouldn't want to upset those guys.
Of course not. Of course not.
Probably want his tickets to the Cubs games.
Yeah, because the Cubs have had a sad enough history as it was. Anyway, thank you very much, Mark, for sharing the story of the non-exploding goat. We don't know. But thanks
Always
for being
happy to share.
Yeah, thanks for being on the program with us once again.
Of course.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com and also the publisher at CuriousPublications.com. He's the author and curator of several books. His latest one is The Talking Dead, a collection of messages from beyond the veil, 1850s to 1920s. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0847, and you'll find the link to Mark's sites, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his books directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And now, boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
Alliance, Ohio police arrested 42-year-old Juan L. Mason after he robbed the Huntington Bank, taking approximately $400 in $1 bills. Mason, who moved to Alliance from Akron just 5 days earlier, entered the bank around 9:20 a.m., claiming he had a weapon and demanding cash before fleeing on foot. Patrolman Paul Vesco found Mason walking after he changed clothes but still carrying the stolen money. Mason was taken into custody without incident and booked into Stark County Jail on aggravated robbery charges. During his arrest, Mason reportedly asked police to deposit the stolen cash into his jail commissary account. Now, why, oh why, would you think that the cops would deposit your ill-gotten gains into your jail account? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0847. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com, and once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0847. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WNRHLP-FM in Newport Richey, Florida, KZZHLP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
Sir Dudley here. You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. I've been laying out Peter's clothes for most of his life. I'm like the human tag on Garanimals.